Hello everyone, TechJax here. This particular video is going to be on how to set up the task sequence in SCCM so that you can deploy to machines. As you can see here in our software library, there's an operating system folder that allows for you to edit and create task sequences. A task sequence is just a set of steps that allow for you to image a machine and actually apply different configurations and settings as you see fit. With SCCM 2012, they give you a lot of different options on what you can do during that task sequence process. And with the MDT tool, which is the Microsoft Desktop, the Microsoft Deployment Toolkit, it allows you to even do a lot more. And we're going to do a video on that because it's a robust tool to be able to use when it comes to your operating system deployments in your environment. So the first thing that we need to do is have a installation.wim. That's our like Windows 7 ISO, or our .wim file allows us to actually install the operating system that we have. That can be retrieved off a Windows ISO or a DVD, or you can sysprep and actually capture the WIM file from the a sysprep machine. In our particular case, we captured it from a sysprep machine, so it has a couple of programs already installed. That particular WIM file was actually uploaded to our server, and we're going to go into our sources in our OSD folder, and there you can see that the install.wim file is there, and it's 5.1 gigabytes. So in SCCM, what we need to do is go to our operating system and images, and we need to import that WIM file so that when we do our task sequence, it knows what operating system to apply during that task sequence. So we're going to actually go ahead and type out our full path to that resource, including the install.wim. And we're going to go ahead and name that. And we're just going to name it like version 1. So we're going to name it TechJax OS so that you guys can see it process as we go through this entire video. It's probably going to be 3 parts, 10 minutes each. So that's our operating system. That's our Windows 7 sysprep install.wim file that's now imported into SCCM. So again, you always want to make sure your content is distributed to your distribution points. And what we're going to do now is check our boot image. Our boot image allows us to actually boot into Windows PE via the Pixie. So what we need to do is make sure that we have the appropriate drivers that are necessary to get into that actual pre-installation environment, which usually includes or depends mostly entirely on having the correct NIC drivers for your particular model of machine. We're using a virtual machine that we're going to actually image today. And there are steps in the actual configuration of your driver packages, if you do have drivers, that allows for those drivers to actually be imported directly into that boot image. As you can see from a previous setup with HP Elite 8300 small form factor, I was allowed to actually import some of the drivers in, and a lot of these we don't need. We didn't need like the audio driver or anything like that, but the NIC drivers we do need. And we actually have NIC drivers for a virtual network interface card. So that allows us and will allow us to boot into Pixie via the virtual machine that we're going to demonstrate later. And here's our task sequence. Our task sequence, and we're going to go ahead and create one, allows us to apply different settings, applications, packages, configurations, customizations to our image when we are actually imaging. So let's go ahead and look at some of the steps that we have in our create a new task sequence wizard. One of the first steps is whether or not you're going to create using an installed image that's already existing, or if you're going to do a build and capture. Build and capture is not something we're going to do right now, but it allows you to actually image a machine, get the applications installed on there, do any configurations that you need, and then capture that as a WIM file, and then that will be what you start to distribute out in your environment as an operating system. In this particular case, we've done that with the sysprep, and we're just going to go ahead and install it because we already have an existing image. And we're going to name this particular task sequence TechJax Demo because we're demonstrating this live or right now in video whenever you see it. And we're going to select the boot image, the 64-bit version that we verified has the drivers that we're going to need to get into our pre-installation environment. So the next actual step allows us to choose an operating system. So we already have an image package, which was selected when we were in the operating system images, and that's the TechJax OS, and it's still transferring content over to our DP. What we're going to do here is go ahead and select that particular TechJax OS, and we're going to go ahead and unselect the configure for the BitLocker because we're not actually including BitLocker on this. This is just a demonstration, but we will partition and format this target machine before installing the operating system. There's also an option to place in a product key, but if you have KMS or MAK or an answer file, then that will suffice. And the option below allows us to set a local admin password in case we're system adminning and we need to be able to get on the local machine for any troubleshooting or any fixing. We would set that particular password here. So all machines that we image with this particular task sequence will have a local admin password that's whatever it is that you just set in that particular field. And our configure the network task, we can join a work group or we can join a domain. So in our particular scenario, we want to join it to a domain, which is our corp.via monster domain, and we want it to go to our workstations OU right off the bat. So in your environment, in an enterprise environment, machines might go to the default container. But if you set this up properly, then what you can do is have machines go to the OU that they should go to based on the steps that you take via the task sequence or MDT. And one of the reasons that you want to do that is because the default container doesn't allow you to run group policies and anything like that off of it. So it's pretty much a container that just holds it, but it doesn't allow you to do any configurations and settings. So we want to actually put this in our workstations OU because we might have security policies and we might want that machine to get those policies as soon as possible whenever it's on the domain. And we're going to go ahead and set our service account that has write permissions to Active Directory to create new objects and computer objects. And that particular account in our domain is the CM_JD for join domain. And I'm going to put in the password for that particular account and verify, test, and the test was successful. So that's good. Our next step will be install the configuration manager client. Now, in environments, you might need to install configuration manager client via myriad of different ways. You can do a manual install. You can do it via group policy. You can do it via Windows updates. You can push it via the SCCM. This particular steps allows the machine to come off the presses, as you will, with the configuration manager client already installed, so that as soon as you log into Windows, you can actually start retrieving content that's being deployed and advertised to that particular machine via whatever collection that it was added to. So that saves the steps for us so that we can actually get content streaming out to those machines, and they already have the SCCM client on them. Now, the state migration is useful if you're going to do it like a Windows XP or Windows Vista to Windows 7 conversion, because in this particular case with USMT, which is the user state migration, you can do a load state, scan state, and grab those documents, put them on a network share, and go from XP to Windows 7 and have those automatically copy back down to that user's machine. In this particular case, we're doing a fresh install from a non-partition virtual machine, so we're not going to capture files from a Windows 7 type machine, Windows XP type machine, but if we were, we want to leave that setting set and we were going to actually go through that process. And we're not going to install any software updates right now, but you can set it to install software updates during the task sequence so that you actually get updates, so that when you log into Windows for the first time, the updates that it's supposed to have, the critical updates, are already installed on your system. And in our install applications, this would allow us to actually install applications that we created in SCCM and that we wanted to actually be available during our task sequence. So if we had Java, or if we had like Adobe or Flash or any other myriad of applications that you can create in SCCM, you can actually make it so that they can actually be deployed via the task sequence. In our particular scenario, we don't have any right now, but there will be a video in which we go ahead and demonstrate how that works. Okay, so we created our task sequence and we created our install.wim so that our task sequence knows what operating system to install. So I'm going to go ahead and let this particular .wim file copy over to the distribution point, and then we'll start with part 2 from there. Thank you. And cut off, please. It's not going to cut off.